Hi, Wendy LeBorgne, and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh
How
my
are
goodness, thank you so much for having me.
how are you?
I am good. I think like the rest of the world, we are coming out of post-COVID, you know, they say the before times and the after times. I call it BC, before COVID and then now. But
Yes.
I think we're all emerging with new thoughts, new ideas, and moving forward as a world.
I think we're all trying to move forward, and all of us are moving at a different pace at this point of time.
Yes, hopefully maybe two steps forward, one step back, but yes.
I could deal with that. Now, we first met when you so graciously agreed to be interviewed as part of my PhD. So I interviewed you as that was around 2015. And then it was maybe a year after that we met in Philadelphia. And I'll never forget that because I had only just landed in Philadelphia and it was like a 36-hour trip from Australia by the time I got to Philly. And I slept in. And I remember having lunch with you, and I don't even remember. I mean, I remember being there, but it was like such a blur. But at least we've connected before, and it's lovely to have that connection. And I know that you've done so much amazing work for our community, and I don't even know where to start with all of this. So I'm going to pick a place and go for it. You are a voice pathologist, a voice specialist, a singing teacher, an author, a presenter, a masterclass clinician. There is so much to unpack. So let's start with the voice pathologist. So, how did you come to become a voice pathologist and how did you end up working with singers? What came first?
So that the story of my life, right? All of those things we weave in. I actually started my world as a performer. So I
Oh,
my undergraduate degree is actually a Bachelor of Fine Arts in musical theater. So I performed professionally and I did that at Shenandoah Conservatory in Virginia. And when I was in my junior or senior year of undergraduates, so my third or fourth year there at Shenandoah, I met a woman named Dr. Jeanette Ogg, who at the time was actually the Van Lawrence Fellowship winner from the
oh wow.
Voice Foundation when she was my mentor. And I came from a family where my dad was a physical therapist, or in Australia, you call them physiotherapists, but my
Yes.
dad was a physiotherapist. And and I really wanted to potentially treat and evaluate vocal athletes. I watched my dad do sports, and my mom was the office manager for the practice, and my sister played sports. And so I got into it. And when I started this, because you have to remember that this was back in 1994, like it was early on, before this idea of voice pathologist and singing voice
Yes.
specialist and all came into existence. So I actually, Bob Sadeloff, Dr. Robert Sadeloff,
Mhm.
at that time had published an article on kind of a performing arts medicine degree. And so I said, I want to do that. It didn't really, I don't think, exist other than in theory at the time. So I took his outline and I said, this is what I'm going to do. I think I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit,
Yes.
and and so I did, and I came here to Cincinnati, um, and I continued my master's and my doctoral work here at the University of Cincinnati in communication sciences and disorders.
Mhm.
And again, had this amazing opportunity to have this mentor in Dr. Joe Stemple, who took me under his wing. And he's like, kind of, I won't embarrass him, but say like the grandfather of voice therapy, or at
Oh,
least vocal function exercises, right? But he took me under his wing, and they allowed me to grow as a clinician. And I really wanted to work with singers. And so that's what I did. And Cincinnati Conservatory of Music is a well-known music conservatory here in the United States. And I continued just kind of marrying my passion and my purpose in helping people get better and then getting them back on stage. And I have been so incredibly fortunate in my career to be able to do that for the last 25 years of my life.
That's amazing. And I love that you said it was your passion and your purpose. That way it must feel that you've never worked a day in your life.
I truly feel that way 90% of the time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I love what I do. I love
Yes.
what I do. I love the people that I meet, and there is nothing better than truly helping somebody
Mm-hmm.
enjoy and empower them to go do what they do best.
Yes.
And in my case, for them, it's singing usually, or acting, or being on the radio, or preaching, or things like, I mean, any place where you're using your voice to influence others, that's what I do.
Yes. We're going to get to all of that influencing part of the interview a little later because I'm fascinated with all the work you're doing there. But as a voice pathologist, what does vocal wellness mean in terms of a singer? For a singer to be in excellent vocal shape, what are the areas that you look at?
So for me, I look at efficiency. Are they efficient in what they're doing? Are they consistent in their performance? Do they have agility, flexibility, stamina,
Mm-hmm.
and dynamic control to meet whatever their market demands are? So whether it is a pop rock singer, whether it is a Broadway singer, can they do those things efficiently and consistently for whatever, whether it's 8 times a week or 3 times a month? So that to me is what I look for in vocal wellness. Um, we, I think I do a lot. I have in the past done a lot of crisis vocal management,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
oftentimes singers don't get to somebody like me until it's at a crisis point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I really am working hard in this next chapter in my career to work on preventative wellness because I know that we're still going to get injured. As singers, it's just the nature of the beast. It's kind of like a dancer is not going to go through a career without an
Yes.
injury, or a football
Yes.
player is not going to go
Definitely.
through.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to do everything we can preventatively to minimize that. But so from a vocal wellness standpoint, that's what I look for in singers. They don't have to be perfectly smooth, straight, pearly white vocal cords, but they've got to be able to maintain the demands without a cost to their system regularly.
Yeah. And what are the most common issues that you see in terms of voice pathologies in singers? Is there more common issues than not?
Um, it depends. I would say that my more advanced singers, so when I say advanced, people that are working professionally in the field, the most common injuries I see in that population tend to be what I will call vocal accidents. So, for example, it would be something like they got bronchitis, they got sick, they got
Okay.
something.
Yes.
They sang through it when they knew they probably shouldn't have, but they had to because
Mm-hmm.
that was what was demanded of them.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then they either get like a hemorrhage, they get acute laryngitis. So it's kind of like this vocal accident. In my less experienced singers, so that's going to make up your bread and butter, right? Like all of the people
Yep.
that maybe don't have as much training, or even my young kids who sing in choral ensembles. Those injuries tend to be more overuse or
Mm-hmm.
misuse injuries. So
Mm-hmm.
we see things like vocal fatigue, where these
Yes.
kids are
Yes.
singing in their voice lessons and then in choir, and then they're
Yes.
doing their show, and then they've had all these, so it's all these overuse injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we'll see things like nodules, things like that. But uh, it's very depending on kind of where people are in their careers, I think, as far as what I see.
Yeah. There is one commonality, though, in amongst all those people that you described, is that a lot of those injuries seem to be external factors. What you've described, a lot of it is external. It would, like, for example, management, uh, kids being at school. I have that at the school that I work at. My boss may
Mm-hmm.
listen to this, and I hope he is, but those kids are in their singing lessons and they're in choir practice a couple of times a week. Then they have big performances. Then they have school assemblies. I had two students yesterday that came to me. There are year 11 and 12 students who came to me and said, we do not want to sing for a week. We literally are so vocally tired, we cannot sing, which I thought, wow, good on you for recognizing that. I'm teaching them well. But how often do you see that it's that something external is going on that's either amplifying the problem or could actually be creating the problem for the singer?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is very rare that it is a single factor that creates the problem, right?
Yes.
It tends to be multifactorial.
Yep.
So it is, from an injury standpoint, is often about vocal dose and vocal load. So how much, how long you do it. That's going to put you, depending on what you do, at a higher risk.
Yeah.
Then it becomes about efficiency, right? Because we know that there have been studies that have been done where they have kids yell for the same amount of time at the same loudness at the same pitch level, and some kids will develop pathology and some kids won't. And so then you go, okay, are there predisposing factors for that person, or is their way of producing sound less efficient than somebody else, so they get into vocal issues? I don't know that we know all of the answers to those questions, but I think that it goes back to, you have to think outside of the voice box, literally.
Yes.
It is physical health. It's what you feed your body. It is your mental, I don't want to say there's mental health as part of it, but
Yes. Yes.
kind of your grit in all of this, how resilient you are when you're faced with adversity. I think some of it is self-regulation, because let's be honest, many of our singers are not quiet people by nature, right?
No.
And so and so sometimes we talk about these external factors.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's really hard for some of our singers to just keep their mouths shut
Yes.
in a cafeteria, all of those things. So I don't always think it's just the singing that causes the problems, but I think it's multifactorial in a lot of cases. So we do have to look at that whole person when we're looking at injury.
So when you have someone that has something going on that is nothing to do with that part of their instrument, but it is maybe something psychological or emotional, what kind of impact does that have on the instrument? How does it affect a performance?
Well, it can be good or bad, right? We all pay to have that emotional connection with another human being, right? And so if somebody has a vocal injury, it has been my experience clinically that it will affect them psychologically, from a self-doubt standpoint.
Yes.
From
Yes.
from a fear of re-injury is huge, right?
Yes.
I help them get better, but it is that fear of, am I going to re-injure myself? Oh my gosh, what if I lose my voice forever? So there's a fear in this. There is the psychological well-being of the individual, and then the self-doubt of, my gosh, I've been a singer my life. Why did this happen now? What did I do wrong? What could I've done? It's all of those questions. So all of those things absolutely impact voice. it's kind of like a pitcher who throws a baseball, right? Or, if you're afraid to throw because you don't want to hurt your shoulder, you're much more likely to hurt it than if you just go through the
Yes.
motion.
Yes.
So from a singing perspective too, when we start to hold back, when we start to fear, we know that the larynx is inherently tied to the brain, the emotional center of the brain, for both good and bad. So
Yes.
it can play to our benefit or it can be a problem.
Yes. And do you find that there are different pathologies for different genres? So, talking at an elite level, so people that are in the midst of their careers. So, if you have a Broadway singer as opposed to a classical singer, as opposed to a performing, touring rock artist, are the pathologies different, or do they still tend to be the same?
They still tend to be pretty similar. They still tend to be pretty similar. I've seen acute hemorrhages in classically trained singers, and I see acute hemorrhages in Broadway singers, and I see acute hemorrhages in heavy metal artists, and I see polyps in all of those, and I see vocal fold nodules in all of those.
Yes.
So I don't, to my knowledge, there was a study done a long time ago looking at genre and pathology. And I would say it was done in the late 80s, maybe early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I don't know that we know that. I've screened at Cincinnati Conservatory every musical theater singer and classical singer that has come through that conservatory for almost 20 years. And what's interesting is that regardless of genre, at least classical or music theater, about 35% of normal singers will have abnormal vocal folds.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
Wow.
plenty of studies that have looked at that across the board. And abnormal could mean dehydration, it could mean reflux. It doesn't have to mean you have nodules or polyps or things like that.
Yes.
What's been interesting to look at is in my classical singers, there's undergraduate, there's master's levels, and then there's the doctoral level students. I've actually seen more pathology in the doctoral level students than in the
Wow.
undergraduates. But let's think
Wow.
about it this way for a moment.
Yes. Yes.
If you think about a dancer who
Mm-hmm.
dances, the
Mm-hmm.
longer you wear point shoes, the
Yes.
worse your feet tend to look,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
and so these pathologies that we see in the more advanced singers are not necessarily impacting their voices negatively or creating career issues,
Mm-hmm.
but we will see slightly abnormal findings. And sometimes it's the abnormalities, I think, that make people interesting to listen to because their voices don't sound like everybody else. And I do
Yes.
think that by the time you're 30 years old, almost, let's say that's where you are, there's been a little bit more wear and tear than there has been when you're
Mm-hmm.
18.
Mm-hmm. And a little bit more of life and life experiences and maybe lifestyle changes. A lot of things to, yeah. I mean, a 30-year-old is very different to an 18-year-old. Yeah. And so I want to ask this question quite specifically, and that is with vocal pathologies, is there one genre that is more vulnerable to vocal pathologies than another? So we have this ongoing discussion about CCM versus classical. Do you believe that there is more vulnerability in one than the other?
I don't actually. I think that they
Yay!
each.
Sorry, give me a minute. Okay, I'm having a moment here. Thank you. Can we stop having that discussion on Facebook now?
So here's the thing. I think
Yes.
that they are both vocal athletes. And I like to use this example when I present on this topic.
Mm-hmm.
I think of classical singers as like your Tour de France cyclists, right? Like they still crash. If anybody's ever watched the Tour de France,
Yes.
they crash, right?
Yes.
However, and they have injuries, they break bones, whatever. I think of my CCM artist as kind of these BMX bikers where they kind of do these crazy stunts and they
Yes.
jump in the air and they spin around and they land.
Yes.
Again, at the highest level of this game, regardless of whether you're an elite cyclist or whether you're a BMX biker, I don't need, all of those stunts, they both come with inherent risk. You're both riding a bike. You're both amazing at what you do. Does one come with more risk than another? Probably not.
Yes.
If you ride long enough, you're all going to crash at some point. Like that's just inherent. So that's just sort of my analogy.
Yeah, I love that analogy. Okay, so talking about vocal athletes, ta-da, we have the book here. I have the book. Such a practical, well-written book. Thank you for allowing us in the voice community to have all this knowledge and this experience of yours wrapped up in here, and with you and Marcy. So where did you come up with, because you used the term vocal athlete earlier, where did you come up with this vocal athlete idea? And how are we like athletes? How do we align with normal athletes?
Yeah, first let me, give out a shout to Marcy,
Yes,
my co-author on that book as
thank
well,
you.
right? Yay,
Yes.
Marcy. So, I honestly, I feel like it was honestly Marcy and I can't say for 100%, but in my head, this is a little bit how I remember it. Also sat down in Philadelphia over a napkin, sort of writing out our outline of what this is going to be. And we talked about this idea of a vocal athlete because it is body, mind, spirit. It is physical from your toes to your head. And why not a vocal athlete? And I don't know which of us came up with the term or how we came up with the term, but we were, it just seemed very fitting. How do I think singers are like athletes? Well, to be on your game, you've got to have mental toughness. You've got to have mental fitness.
Yes, definitely.
You need to be vocally fit, meaning that you've got to have stamina, flexibility, agility, consistency of performance. You just can't do a backflip off a balance beam once and you've got to be able to do that every night if that's what you do.
Yes.
Which is also like an elite athlete, or any athlete. You don't have to be the best at your game to enjoy it either. I think you need to love your sport, right? We need to love what we do as singers.
Absolutely.
It takes respiratory training as well as respiratory maximization. And your larynx is like your knee. It's made up of cartilages and ligaments and muscles. And so why should we not think of ourselves as athletes? I think when people, and there's so many parallels just in the exercise physiology literature in what we do. And I don't know, that's just the way I think of it.
Yes. So you have elite athletes in sport, and they have certain regimes that they undertake on a daily basis to make sure that they're physically fit and they're in optimum shape and to be able to perform at their best. What can singers do to perform at their best? And why can we be so lazy at looking after ourselves? We don't think of ourselves in those terms, or not all of us.
Right. I wish I had all of the answers to those questions. So what can we do? I think being the best version of you, whatever that is. And we talk about athletes, and when I start talking about this, sometimes I get a little pushback of like, that's not who I am, or I can't be like super. I'm not saying be super skinny. I'm not saying all of those things. I'm saying when you think about fueling your body, fuel for success. If you do great with protein, do protein. If you do great with carbs, but whatever you eat and drink, that's part of who we are, right? And so you need to think about that. You need to think about practicing daily. With that said, you also need to take days of rest.
Mhm.
I'll say that again. You need to take days of rest to
Yes.
perform well.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think so often as performers, we're in this go mode. I have to say yes. I can't say no to any, like you're building, it's this it is this mindset that has been in place for centuries, probably,
Mhm.
honestly. And and so I think that giving yourself grace to take days of rest, um, I think some of the healthiest I've seen some of my performers is after COVID for the
Yes.
last year, because they are so vocally rested.
Yes.
They sound and feel like $1,000,000. Not that we're going to be able to take 12 months off, and I hope we never ever do anything like this again.
Mhm.
But with that said, um, in a we're talking about like higher level commercial music artists, they might be singing it, especially if they're like on a tour. They might be singing in one city one night, and then they're getting on a bus, and then they've got to go to city the next night. So they're
Mhm.
not getting good sleep, or they're sleeping on a bus. They're sometimes having to stop and eat
Yeah.
at places that they wouldn't normally fuel their body.
Yes. Yes.
It's a very different mentality. So
Yes.
anything you can do to prepare for that, I think is great. Um, I'm a huge proponent of mental fitness. Every single one of really high level elite athletes have sports psychologists, not because there's anything wrong,
No.
um, but
No.
to get your head in the game, to be at that peak mental performance when you do what you need to do. I'm a huge proponent of meditation, or whatever your prayer, meditation, something that allows your brain to focus. It doesn't always have to be vocal practice
Mhm.
to get you to your performance goals.
Exactly, exactly. And you said, I'm going to come back to that meditation in a moment, and you, but just finishing up on the singers that you're working with, you shared with me that come July, some of your Grammy award winning performers are going to be hitting
Mhm.
the road again after 12 months of not doing live performances and touring. So you said they're in great, they're singing really well, but how do you get them vocally fit and lifestyle fit for that tour? How do you prepare them as their coach now to get them back into that shape again?
Yeah, I mean, so many of these artists, I think, have been working on and off on their voice through this whole 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
We are now, it's kind of like preparing for a race at this point, right? We're ramping up the amount of time that they're singing, the intensity of time that they're singing, really working range, thinking about what this looks like for the next 6 to
Yeah.
12 months. All of those things. I know that the Hamilton tours are going back out.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, some of those artists have had that conversation with me, and that's a high intensity show too. And
Yes, I've
so you
seen.
have to prepare now.
Mm-hmm.
You can't wait till 2 weeks before,
No.
because we're 8 weeks out about at this point. And so it is time. We are doing vocal stamina, physical stamina, mental wellness, and respiratory stamina. I mean, we are hitting it. And I do it both from a very physiologic standpoint as well as an artistic standpoint. So that's a little bit of my bias,
Yes.
is that I feel like you need to have a good physiologic foundation. So we do respiratory training, we do laryngeal muscle strength training. I think of it as going to the vocal gym before we do the artistic part. So for me, it's like, okay, I got to do bicep curls before I can throw that ball. It's not just throwing 100-mile-an-hour ball. It is, let me strengthen those muscles so that I can be efficient. And that's where we are. And that's what we're working on.
So is that a lot of repetitious work? The same way you would in a gym? Is it repetition? Like
It
doing
is.
sets of repetitions?
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually use with my artists respiratory trainers, inspiratory and expiratory trainers. We use vocal function exercises to maximize laryngeal glottic closure, flexibility, things like that. So
Yes.
if there's any artists out there that are ready, like I'm here. we're
She's
doing this
here.
vo- we're doing this vocal reconditioning, and God bless Zoom, we can do it across the pond.
Actually, it would be great to have like a big class of people, like do a workshop on all of
Yeah.
this, like a series. Yay.
Think about yeah. So
Yay.
let me just say that's a little bit in the works with the new
Oh,
endeavor that's
okay.
occurring.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that sounds like a great idea. Um, and okay, so in terms of you personally, what does self-care mean for you?
Oh my gosh. So this has been a year, I mean, for all of us, but a year of change, certainly for me.
Hmm.
Um, I've pivoted a little bit in my career from strictly doing clinical to now combining some clinic with really working with high level vocal athletes back on tour. So for me, that means also I really take time for myself every day. I am an early riser, not a night owl. So I get up usually most days between 5 and 5:30 in the morning,
Wow.
and um I meditate, and
Hmm.
I am a faithful person, so prayer is part of what I do, separate from
Yes.
meditation.
Yes.
Um and then I'm a person who likes to start my day with also exercise. Now, I do these separately
Mhm.
because even though I love to multitask, I don't find that that is best for my self-care. So truly,
No,
like
no.
I'm actually I'm sitting in my meditation chair here. Like this is where I
Oh,
sit in the morning, because in my private space. But yeah, I do that, and I do it every day. And then exercise for me, walking is something that I do,
hmm,
and strength training. um I meal plan for my family for the week, so usually my Saturdays and Sundays I try to meal plan um for healthy foods, as well as budgeting. It works better if I meal plan and don't go
yes,
out. um
absolutely.
but really, even over the course of a week, looking at, you know fish one night, or a meatless meal one night, and then chicken or pork, so that we have the variety in what we do. And we work on that as a family too, because I think it's important. My boys are still young, and so incorporating that into what hopefully they'll take out. I have really minimized my social media. I actually
Mm,
block time. I
hmm,
block time in my day
hmm.
where I will allow myself to look at social media.
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Um, but I've cut back on my social media consumption and posting too.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it gets a
Respect
little
here.
overwhelming, honestly.
Hmm. It does.
So
No,
those are
it's
some things I
true.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not only does it affect your mood, but also too, you can be stuck there for such a long period of time. You can get suckered in to being on social media for hours if you let it. I mean, it's just one big funnel. It's like a cave, and you get to a point of no return. But you're in a position of service. What you do, you serve others. Basically, as singing teachers, we are in an area of service. You're a mum, you have two boys, 11 and 16. You're a wife, a professional, a voice teacher, an author. You have so much on the go. How do you juggle all these roles?
Sometimes better than others. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
yeah,
Um, and you know, I'm really lucky that I have a supportive husband, right?
yes.
We'll be married for 25 years in
Oh,
July.
beautiful. Same.
So I know it's so
Just over
exciting.
25. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's helpful for me.
Hmm.
I I am I think that juggling it all, as a mom and as a woman and as a wife, the older I've gotten, I think my priorities have shifted a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And what was important at 20 is not as important in my 40s, or it's just shifted. And I don't think you can have it all at the same time. I think that there is a huge cost to yourself
Yes.
if you try to do that. And
Yes,
I learned that the
definitely.
hard way for
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
Um, uh, so as I take on some of these new roles and new responsibilities in my own business, um, working on that balance, because if there's anything I've learned, I don't want to go back to that crazy, crazy rat race.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I block time for writing, trying not to overcommit,
Yes.
saying, okay, I
Yes.
need to get this project done before I commit to six others,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so I think that's how you work on the balance. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I don't, it is an ongoing learning process.
Yeah. And it's learning to say no as well, isn't it? Sometimes.
It
And
is.
that's so hard for us, especially as voice teachers, because we want to please everybody. We want to make everyone happy, and we're all fighting for our jobs, and so we don't like to say no. And as you transition, just say you've been to the office and your clinic for the day, and then you come home. How do you transition then back into being a mom and a wife? Like, there's a thing, segment intending. I don't know if you've heard of it, where you set the intention for what you're going to do next. Like, do you go through something where you go, okay, now I'm home and now this is the person I'm going to be? Or do you naturally just go through that transition from one role to another?
Um, I think I probably should transition better. And I'm not gonna there have been times where my commute before COVID
Mm-hmm.
was, it was up to an hour and a half some days. And
Yeah,
so
a lot.
that time I listened to audiobooks, or there are times when I would come home and I'd sit in my driveway and I would truly do like a 2 minute meditation reset before I walked into the house,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
it is, sometimes that happens. Sometimes I have to put a sign on my in-house office door that says, you know, leave me alone, right? Just I need 10 minutes, because I will come in
Oh
here
my
and just,
gosh.
reset.
Good
Yeah.
on you.
So,
Because that my next question was, how do you take a breath during the day? Like, there's times where you just said that you say, just leave me alone for 10 minutes. And we all need that. And it's hard, isn't it, with family? I know that my husband will follow me around the house, or if my kids are here or my grandkids, like, you need to be able to say that, don't you? Or put that sign. I need a sign, but I need it to be big, because he would not
and,
get
that-
rid of
and
it.
well, and it's so funny. Like, this even just happened this morning in my world is, I get up, I'm doing my routine. The kids are home for summer now,
Hmm.
and my husband's a teacher, so he was also home.
Oh
So
my.
today was my first day back from vacation. So I came in my office, I sat, it's like 7 o'clock in the morning. Like, everybody should not be bothering me. I'm
No.
trying to answer the emails from the last week, and my husband's literally trying to have a conversation he's like sorting things in here. I'm like, okay, it is now time for me to be at work in my little office here. And
Yes.
so, sometimes it's just creating some boundaries.
Oh my.
Um,
It is hard, isn't it? Like, my husband, like, I get home from work, from teaching, and then I like to have some creative time where I just sit and work on a passion project, and generally be some creative writing, working on this podcast. And, I might only be in here 15 minutes, and I get, Dal, you going to make the salad, or do you want me to make it? Like, it's like, leave me alone. I mean, literally, I would like to tell him where to place the salad, but I don't, you know. But They don't like to leave us alone. It's like, what do they do without us? Bless.
That's right. That's
So,
right. And and I enjoy my time, and wind down time. Like when I literally block time on my schedule, like
mm,
tonight,
yes,
it's morning your time, it's nighttime
yes,
for me.
yes,
But I
yeah,
block time in my schedule and I go, okay, at 8:45, I'm doing 15 minutes of core work because
yes,
I'm trying to get
yeah,
a little core work in the morning, core work at
mhm,
night. And then I have reading time for myself.
yes,
And um, reading for me can't be so much on my phone or my iPad. I like
yeah.
actually like an actual book to read, right?
Oh,
And
really? Oh, good on you.
um,
I'm an audio.
and, I do like when I walk, I listen to audiobooks, or if I read on my phone, these are like blue light glasses because I just find that it keeps me awake. Over this last year, I've always been a person that sleeps from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. Like I'm just a good sleeper. Like, and this year has rocked that. And I find myself waking up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And I just go,
Mhm.
okay, we need to reset what this is. So
Yeah.
I've made some changes coming into later in my evening to be able to do that.
Yes. Do you find now that you need that time to prepare to go to sleep almost like some way of like getting off social media or getting off your devices, time that you start to wind down and you don't look at emails and things like that? Is that the kind of thing that you're doing?
Yeah, I've made a really conscious decision that, when I'm done at, 6 o'clock, that I am not looking at any more emails. I don't check social media. I
Mm-hmm.
make a very conscious decision first thing in the
Yes.
morning that I don't, most of my phone is my alarm clock, right? It's like
Yes,
everybody
like
else.
all of us.
But
Yeah.
I make a really conscious effort in that first hour of getting up that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking at the news, I'm not
Yes.
looking at my email, I'm not
Yes.
looking at social media.
Yes.
But every day it's a struggle. I'm not
It
going to lie,
is.
right? Like
It is.
I have to make this decision to do it. And that the first emails that I send in the morning are emails that I have intention to send. Like I wanted to reach out to somebody versus being at everyone else's beck and call and start my day with
Yes.
answering everybody else's emails,
Yes.
because then I
Yes.
find that I
Yes.
never get to the ones that I need to do.
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? Where people don't realize that when they check their emails, they're allowing other people to take control of the direction of their morning. Whereas, and you don't get the things done that you need to get done. And if someone sends you an email in the middle of the night, well, clearly they're disorganized. And why do you have to pick up the pieces for them? That's how I look at it. Might be a bit harsh, but you know what I'm saying. Unless it's an international colleague, but if it's someone else, you think, well, why didn't you get that done in the day, and why didn't you let me know about this about 48 hours ago rather than leaving it to the last minute? You're in crisis and you want me to help you? No.
Yeah, and or if for myself also, if I have one of those crazy sleepless nights and I'm like, all right, I'm going to be productive, I'm going to answer some emails, I always set my email send time to at least 7 or 8 a.m. so people don't see that I'm answering them at 3 o'clock in the
Oh,
morning.
you're one of those people. Oh, you're busted.
If I have to get up and do, if I totally can't sleep, because if I you know if I'm in one of those cycles of like, okay, I'm waking up at 3 and I've got a million things, I will literally do some meditation in the night to try to fall back asleep. If I still can't after 30 minutes, I'll get up and go to a different place just because I don't want
Yeah.
to make that cycle happen. But if I do say, okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes answering emails, I do time delay my send. Instead of not being productive and thinking about the emails, I'll at least respond, but just delay the send
I didn't
to a
know.
normal hour.
Oh, okay.
I do.
I didn't know you could do that.